Welcome to my video on the restraint bias. So let's get the music rolling and let's dive into it. So, what is the restraint bias? The restraint bias is individuals' ability to underestimate, to overestimate their level of self restraint when it comes to things like visceral urges. So, what is a visceral urge? A visceral urge is a sort of like a natural urge that happens in your body um, with things like hunger, sex drive, thirst, maybe even drug use. It's those ideas in our head telling us that we want to do these things and it's okay to sort of just go ahead and indulge. So, sort of all humans are affected by this bias, the restraint bias, and everyone has to sort of figure out how to manage it within their lives. Now, this is sort of the art piece I kind of came up with explaining the restraint bias. We have an individual walking on a thin tightrope of self-control, and they're confident. They're balancing everything. They think that they totally got this, but then their impulses come along and sort of snap that rope, and they fall into their visceral urges and they divulge in them. So, how this let's look at this bias in action, like in a hypothetical scenario. So, let's bring up the diagram and let's look at it. So, let's say we have a guy who's a smoker and he decides he finally wants to stop smoking. He wants to kick it. Stops buying cigarettes, smokes his last pack, he's done. Um, he doesn't allow himself to be around it personally. He does everything he can to get away from it. Then we go on to the third square where he shares it. He shares to his friends that he quits. Kind of letting everyone know, yeah, I'm done with that stuff. And then in the same conversations, his friends invite him to a house party, and he accepts the invite. He's not gonna avoid being around his friends. Now, prior to the party, he tells himself, hey, I haven't been smoking for the past 2 months. I'm not gonna go to this party and smoke. Not 2 months, let's say a week. I've been smoking for a whole week, and now, let's go to this party. I think I can handle myself. So he arrives at the party, and almost immediately he's offered a cigarette. His friends forget that they told him, and they're like, "Hey man, you want a cig?" So he denies a cigarette, but it gets it going in his head, sort of like the potential scenarios. So now we go over to the next square where we see he's envisioning himself feeding into this urge of smoking in his head. He's thinking of scenarios, thinking of himself sitting there with the cigarette in his hand. And as time goes on, this internal battle of weighing the pros and cons of smoking, he gets in this decision where he feels like he has to choose one or the other, putting himself, well, the pros of smoking is that he'll feel good immediately, it'll feel nice, it'll feel cool, but he'll be breaking his long-term goal. But he ends up deciding, one time won't hurt, and so he goes on his own free will to a friend and asks for a cigarette. The friend gives it to him. He gets reminded of the feeling of smoking, and on the way back home from the party, after everything's all said and done, he ends up buying a pack just for the night. And it's through this that he relapses with his cigarette addiction after thinking he had more self-control than he actually did. So now that we've seen this sort of like in play, how it kind of plays out, someone overestimating their ability to control themselves, let's look at sort of why it happens. So this tends to happen due to a part in the brain known as the right prefrontal cortex, and this is sort of the part of your brain that makes decisions, and it weighs the pros and the cons of a situation and sort of how you look at a situation. And we see that in younger sort of adolescents, if they kind of toy around with drugs, it impacts the development of this and causes them to sort of not be able to see the right decision, seeing the most beneficial long term decision in the heat of the moments. They want the immediate feedback. I want to feel it now. And so the part of the brain that is responsible for this is the right prefrontal cortex. And there's a study done by Notch and Fuhrer in 2007, and they put subjects in a tough decision. There's 5 boxes, or there's a total of 6 boxes. 5 of them were blue and 1 of them were pink, and they would ask the individuals ranging from different age ranges to explain or to choose the one they think they had that had the star in. So you're either making a decision with 1 in 6 odds or 5 in 6 odds. And what they saw is individuals with a less developed right prefrontal cortex tend to take the riskier decisions or the riskier choices and choosing the 1 in 6 option. And so this basically proved that this part of the brain is responsible for this action, for this sort of bias, the restraint bias. Now, how can we stop this bias? So let's bring up our third image, excuse me. And this is sort of what we have to explain where the point of decision can be alleviated. So it is when the individual begins this internal battle in their head of, should I do it? I've been trying so hard not to. And then, well, why not? One time won't hurt. Or, well, I'm the one holding myself back, so I can also let myself do it. And it is in this key moment where the individual is weighing the 2 options that they need to value the long-term benefit over the immediate positive, like the immediate feedback of whatever they're going to choose, whether it's binge eating, sexual drive. They have to be able to suppress these urges and remember their goal and value it that much. Now, that being said, not everyone has that level of self-control to be able to remind themselves in the heat of the moment. This is the other alternative, is having an external figure. It's like a friend, but it has to be someone that the individual highly respects and almost looks up to in a way, and their words mean something, to sort of have them come in and remind them, hey, you've already been working so hard to not do this. Don't mess us up now just because you're in the heat of the moment. Remember how much effort you've put in to not continue this behavior. And it sort of can bring them out of that internal battle of telling themselves that they want to do it. With stuff like, it's most easily explained with like drug use, like fighting the urge to actually want to do it, and having someone come in and telling them, hey, it's okay, you got this, you're strong, you're powerful, you can manage this. And with that, I think that concludes my explanation on the restraint bias. Thank you.